The Vegas Stats and Information Network presents My Guys in the Desert.
Meeting in the middle of the desert always made me nervous. It's a scary place.
Interact with the show and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at VSiN Live.
They are trending, twittering, tweeting.
Now live from the VSiN studios, it's Brent Musburger.
Welcome back to the VSiN studios, and let me remind you that next Sunday the bracket will be set. You can watch that unfold on CBS and then come over here to VSiN, because live we're going to put up the spreads on every first round game. That will be true March Madness, and we will take the air on Sirius XM 3 o'clock next Sunday afternoon. My Guys in the Desert. What a pleasure for me to welcome in really a great, great friend and someone I have admired. He's the hit king. You know him very well. You enjoyed him on Fox during the coverage of the World Series last year on the pregame show, postgame. We welcome in Pete Rose. Pete, thank you so much for joining us, my friend.
Brent, it's a pleasure to talk with you, and I've always told you you had a face for TV. What the hell are you doing on radio?
You know, I can reach more of those baseball fans as they're driving to the game, if you know what I mean, Pete.
Yeah. Remember when we used to have fun with Irv Cross and Jimmy the Greek and Phyllis, and then, of course, Jane Kennedy back on the NFL Today back in the old days? How much fun was that to sit there at halftime and have all the games going in one room? It's all over like that now, but back in those days, that was the only place you could go to watch every game.
Oh yeah, Pete, we had so much. Let me tell our audience that we would bring Pete in those Octobers when his team had not made the Major League Baseball playoffs, and one day I have to tell you, the Greek came down ill. And we honestly didn't know what to do with our handicapping segment. And so finally, Pete volunteered. He said, I can do that. So, folks, I want to tell you, we put Pete up for a couple weeks, and I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to tell the Greek that Pete did much, much better picking those NFL games. Pete, you were a star. We wanted to have you on regularly, my friend.
I remember the one time we're sitting there watching the game. It's right before halftime, and the Giants are on. And all of a sudden, the Greek kicked the TV. And I said, Brent, what the hell? Was he kicking the TV? He said he needed that score, and they took a knee, and he had 50,000 bet on it. So not only he lost the 50,000, but he broke his foot.
Oh, if they only knew what went on with the Greek behind the scenes, Pete. It was fabulous watching those games with him, wasn't it?
Oh, it was fun, man. There's no time like that, I swear. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. So, listen, as we approach the Major League Baseball season, you know, the Chicago Cubs have the highest win total, but it's pretty big. I mean, 95.5. Now, I know they won 103 games last year, but are they going to come back and be that strong this year, Pete?
Well, I'd like to be in the Cubs situation, Brent. What I mean by that is we're getting ready to open the season in a couple of weeks. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the Cubs can prepare for the playoffs because I don't think Cincinnati can beat them in the Central. I don't think Milwaukee can beat them. I know Pittsburgh can't beat them, and I'm afraid to say St. Louis can't beat them. So they're going to waltz through their division, I would think, unless they have a total collapse. So I would have to say the Cubs are really the favorite to beat in the world of baseball in both leagues because they're coming off of a tremendous year. That's going to carry them into this season. They've got great young players. I know they're going to miss Fowler. I know they're going to miss Chapman, but they'll find a way. I mean, they'll find a way just to get the job done. And there's not too many teams in the Cubs situation as far as able to waltz through their division and get ready for the playoffs. And I hate to say that in March, but that's the way it looks to me.
And Pete, I was impressed from afar. I don't know him well with manager Joe Maddon. I would think that if you were a player, you would enjoy being with him. What did you find out when you were around him in the playoffs?
Well, I don't think I would enjoy playing for Joe Maddon. I'll tell you why. Because from what I hear, Joe's not really ticklish on batting practice. Joe's not really ticklish on meetings before games. When I was a manager, I never missed batting practice as a player, manager, as a player. that's part of the fun of being in the world of baseball. So, you know, as you know, Brent, we talked about this. Joe is a tremendous manager, and he got the job done, but he tried to screw that World Series up several times.
You know, I have to admit you're right on target. The seventh game, those of us who had the Cubs, Pete, and were watching you guys, Phil, we were a little uneasy because he brought Chapman in. I know you had to feel a little bit too early in that game.
Well, then the one time when it's 7-2 and Chapman's out there and Rizzo hits the home run, make it 9-2. If he don't hit that home run, he's sending Chapman back out there in Game 6.
Right.
And what about the time when he took out Hendricks with 4 2/3 of shutout baseball? And this guy led the world in earned run average. Give the kid a chance to win a World Series game. He may never be in that situation again. You start pinch hitting for guys like Addison Russell, you know, the great young shortstop. So there was a lot of things that changing up the lineup. And finally, Brent, last year, Joe got away from hitting the pitcher eighth. I listened to him explain to you and I why he hit the pitcher eighth, and he talked for 5 minutes, and he'd get finished, and I'd say, what the hell did he say? You know, you don't hit the pitcher eighth. You don't hit the pitcher eighth in the lineup. First of all, Brent, if you're hitting ninth, how would you feel when with no DH and you're on a team in the National League and you're hitting ninth? That's embarrassing, I think.
Yeah,
and I don't know if any pitcher can hit eighth on my team. And we've been doing it this way since 1869, and there's been 3 managers that hit the pitcher eighth. Tony La Russa, who was a great manager, the guy in Cincinnati, and Joe Maddon. So are all the rest of us wrong as far as hitting the pitcher eighth?
Yeah, it's such a good point. I never quite understood when La Russa was doing it, to tell you the truth. And we're talking with Pete Rose. We're inside baseball here. And Pete, elsewhere in the National League, when you look at the East, I don't know that anybody can challenge Washington. Well, maybe the Mets, but what do you make of the National League East?
Yeah, I think the Mets with that pitching, especially if Harvey comes back, because – you know, the Mets don't score a lot of runs, but they score enough runs to support that pitching staff. And Washington, hopefully, Harper will have a bounce back year because he had MVP year 2 years ago, and he kind of tapered off last year as far as average. I think he hit the 240 or something, but he's still a guy who can hit the ball out of the ballpark, and a guy can play good defense and run the bases and hit you a home run. So, you know, Washington's going to be tough, but they got some competition. Out in the other league, San Francisco and the Dodgers look like the 2 teams to beat out there. They'll once again have that rivalry going because anytime you got Kershaw and that young shortstop Seager and Gonzalez at first base, they're going to be a good ball club. And we all know what Bruce Bochy can do with San Francisco. They just always seem to be right in the middle of things in that division out there.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because you mentioned a couple of teams, Pete. We've talked about the Cubs with that over-under of 95.5. The only other teams in Major League Baseball with a total over 90, the Boston Red Sox, the Cleveland Indians, and you've mentioned the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Washington Nationals. So let's turn our attention over to the American League. Cleveland Indians, did they surprise you, Pete? They really surprised me last year. They kind of came out of nowhere, and now they appear to be the class of the field over there in the American League.
Well, they're going to get those pitchers that were hurt back, and they got Encarnacion now, who's a really good run producer, and I think Napoli, who hit 34 home runs for him last year, laid an egg in the World Series along with Lindor. I think Lindor got 1 hit the last 4 or 5 games of that World Series. And Brent, you know this as well as I. You've been watching baseball. When you're 3-1 in a World Series and you have 2 remaining home games, you are not supposed to lose a World Series. And that was the position Cleveland was in last year. And they'll be back this year. They're going to have a good ball club. And I think Boston's a team to beat if Bryce's elbow's okay. There's been some talk this week. He's getting an MRI of his forearm and his elbow. And, with Sale and the Cy Young winner over there, they got hitters. I mean, I did New Year's Eve with Chili Davis. And I said, Chili, how hard is your job? You're the hitting coach for the Boston Red Sox. All you got to do is tell them what time to be on the field and sit back and watch what goes on. I mean, they got a great offense. And Brent, that's the thing you and I are talking about right now. If you analyze baseball, okay, how many good teams do we have? Maybe 10?
Yeah, if
Maybe
that.
12?
Yeah, if that.
And,
It's true.
so what we're saying is there's going to be more teams lose more games than they win. So that's really parity in the game of baseball. And you and I can sit here for 3 minutes and talk about the top teams, which we just did. And then the other teams they're all also runs, is what they are.
Exactly. And, we look at the American League West. Speaking of that, you've got Houston, Texas, and Seattle. They're the lowest prices right now out there, and I don't think any of them are that solid.
Well, I think Houston's a pretty good ball club. I mean, but the only problem with Houston, Brent, and you know this as well as I, they play in a bandbox.
Right.
It's hard to pitch in Houston. I mean, everybody becomes a home run hitter when you go to Houston to play in Minute Maid Park. I did an appearance down there about a month and a half ago, and I stood at home plate, and I said, man, I can't throw it to second base. I think I could throw it over the right field wall.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how close it is down there. And they got good young players. Texas, Hamill was just laid an egg during the playoffs last year. I don't like Seattle that much, and I don't like California, the Angels, that much. So I think that's one of the two Texas teams will represent that division.
Pete, as I look back in your career, you really did not have an off season. I was thinking about Bryce Harper here in Las Vegas and going back. What would you recommend for a hitter like Harper during the season when you're slumping a little bit or coming into another season like he is? What would Pete Rose say to a hitter like Harper to help him out?
Well, I would just try to tell him to use the whole field because unless I'm mistaken, Brent, Bryce Harper is not going to be a batting champion type player. He's going to be a 270 to 285 hitter. Going to hit close to 40 home runs, knock in over 100 runs, and play good defense. So I don't expect him to hit 320, 330 like that because I just don't think he's going to put the ball in play that much. And they're going to pitch him tough, but he's the guy you got to pitch tough on that ball club. So I would think for Bryce is a young hitter. He's a young player. And there's another thing. Is he going to be able to produce just like Hosmer from Kansas City, knowing you got that big contract out there? A lot of guys really produced on the last year of a contract, or a guy that's anticipating a really, really big contract. Some guys can handle that, Brent. Some guys can't. So it's going to be interesting. They're talking about $400 million with Bryce Harper. That's a load to put in your mind every time you go up to bat. I got to do this. I got to do that, because if you lay another egg this year, you're not going to get no $400 million. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, I can't even count that high. But Pete, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk about Harper and the New York Yankees that he'll wind up wearing pinstripes. Should we listen to that chatter, or is it just idle baseball gossip?
Well, you never know nowadays, Brent, because the Yankees are one of those teams. They're one of those teams that are willing to spend big money. I mean, Hosmer from Kansas City is a really good player. And he's on the last year of his contract. Now, first of all, if you tell your team, which Hosmer did, and I hate to get off of Harper, but I'm just thinking about Hosmer right now. I think I'm right about this. You tell the team that if you don't sign me by the time the season starts, I'm leaving. Now, what does that tell your fans? Mm-hmm. Your fans are pissed at you right now because you already told them you're leaving the town.
Exactly.
And now you put together with the fact that I had to produce in order to get a big contract. That puts a lot of pressure on a player, pressure that you don't need as a player. But the Yankees, if they need a right fielder, and Harper would be perfect for the Yankees with that short porch in right center, I mean, he'd be idealistic for that ball club. So there again, Washington can't afford to let him go because he's the team right now. He is it in Washington, and you don't want to ruin your fan base by not paying top dollar to a guy like Bryce Harper.
So they're tinkering with some of the rules. I guess they'd like to speed up the game a little bit.
Why?
Pete, what's your opinion about all this?
I don't get it, Brent. And I think the commissioner said something the other day that made a little bit of sense to me. He was contemplating knocking off some of the commercials. Brent, you got a 9-inning game. Every inning, there's 6 minutes of commercials. That's 54 minutes of commercials. How in the hell are you going to shorten up the game? By not awarding a 4-pitch, intentional walk how many intentional walks you have a night? Maybe one. I mean, those are stupid fixes. I mean, I actually got a hit one night. Well, it was an error, but on an intentional walk, and the
Really?
guy threw it within my range, and I hit it off the third baseman's glove. So, you know, what about Lester if he's given an intentional walk? Is everybody holding their breath?
That's true. They do hold their breath when he gets an intentional
Because he
walk.
can't throw the ball straight like that. So I don't know why. I don't know if Joe Torre's the guy or who it is, Brett, but I don't know why baseball all of a sudden wants to change all the rules.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't change the rules in basketball. Hell, the last 2 minutes of a basketball game take 45 minutes to play. Football games, we used to start them at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Now they start the second games at 4:30 because they're 3.5 hours long. You know, people are fickle, Brent, because if you're a Reds fan and you go to the game tomorrow night and it's an hour and 55 minutes and the Reds lose 1-0, you're pissed on the way home. Now you come back the next day and they win 14-2 and it took 4.5 hours. You're happy on the way home. I don't know where everybody's in a hurry all of a sudden. It's just like people complain about the price of tickets at a baseball game. It's the best bargain in sports, but the guy who complained, Brent, he went to the game, he had 5 beers and 4 hot dogs. That's where he spent all of his money. Go to the game to see the game. Don't go to the game to eat.
I guess, you know, Pete, what they're saying is that these millennials, you know, they look at their iPhones all the time, and they have no attention span like you and me, like us old timers, lad.
Did you ever notice when you're panning through the audience during a game, everybody, it's just like when you go through the airport, everybody's eating. Everybody's eating at the ball game. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. That's why the tickets are so high. To get your seat wasn't that bad. But now the 4 hot dogs and the 5 beers that come along with the seat take it out of reach.
You know, the World Baseball Classic now unfolding. Yeah. I'm of the opinion that Pete Rose would have loved to play for the United States team. Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I just love to play baseball. I mean, I would love to play the Japanese players. I'd love to play the Dominican Republic. I'd love to play Puerto Rico. They'll play with a lot of pride. And I think the team that you got to watch when you have a series like this, Brent, is I think the team trying to make a statement would be Japanese baseball.
Right.
Because somewhere along the line, a lot of these critics think Japanese baseball is equivalent to big league baseball. Now, I played in Japan 3 times, 3 different tours. And Japanese baseball is tremendous baseball, and they're very fundamentally sound. They work and they practice real hard. But yet Japanese baseball, if it was as easy to play as Major League Baseball, there'd be more Japanese players here. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm concerned, there's been 2 players from Japan that have really had solid careers in the big leagues. The guy from the Yankees, Matsui. Mm-hmm. Matsui. He was a King Kong when we played in Japan, but I think his career high for home runs with the Yankees was 33. And, of course, Ichiro is the other great player from Japan. But I played against some good players in Japan who could have come here, like Sanahara O or Harimoto or Kaneda, the left-hand pitcher from over there. But some reason along the line, they don't want to come here because you make a hell of a lot more money here than you do in Japan or you do in Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico or Venezuela. So, you know, those teams, those countries have not caught up with Major League Baseball yet, but they're trying.
How about those guys who want to add Ichiro's hits in Japan to his hits here in the United States, and they want to go after my man, the hit king, Pete Rose? Well, that's just not fair.
Well, I tell people this. Now, as far as I'm concerned, when Ichiro got his hits in Japan, those were professional hits. That's what they're called, professional. They weren't big league hits. They were professional hits.
Right.
So if you're going to count Ichiro's Japanese hits, count my professional hits, like my 2 years in the minor leagues.
How many hits did you have?
47. Now I got 4,700 hits. Because there's not much difference. There's not much difference in the Sally League where I played. 7 guys on my team and made the big leagues, and Japanese baseball. There's not much difference in AAA baseball and Japanese baseball. But there again, Ichiro and I both got over 4,000 hits, and the press tries to make us, we have to defend ourselves. Ichiro's a Hall of Fame player, no question about it. You know, he was a great young hitter, and he's a great hitter in Japan, a great hitter here. I don't know what he'd have did if he was playing in the big leagues when he was 20, 21 years old. I've been watching baseball for 40 years. Not too many guys come over here and dominate at the age 20 or 21. Not too many guys win bag titles at the age 20 or 21 in the major leagues. You know that, and I know that.
Yeah, exactly. Pete, I know you pay attention to college basketball. Who do you like to win the national championship?
Well, you got so many good teams right now. I'm still rooting for the underdog. I know they won by 10 or 11 last night, and that's Gonzaga. You know, they lost one game this year, and I know they don't have the toughest schedule in the world, but they're always in the top 10, Brent. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I really haven't followed it yet because there's too many games. You still have 30, 40 games and all the conference playoffs, and I'm rooting for Mick Cronin in Cincinnati. You know, they're 18th in the country, and they beat the hell out of Connecticut the other day, and they play defense. That's why I like the Bearcats. But are they an Elite 5 team? I don't know about that. But I'm sure someone will surprise us, and someone will who do you like in that season? You know more about than I do.
You know, I kind of like the Kansas Jayhawks this year. I know they've struggled a little bit.
They're always good, too.
Yeah.
They're always good, too.
And
UCLA's good, too. And UCLA went down to Kentucky and beat the Wildcats in Kentucky. That's pretty hard to do. And, you know, you can't ever think Coach Cal will get those Kentucky freshmen playing good when tournament time comes. And, of course, you got Patino down at Louisville. You know, he always knows how to motivate guys. I mean, you know, a lot of that Sweet 16 and stuff comes with good coaching, Brent, because they know how to get these players ready for that tournament.
Now, before we let you go, and I know I've been down to visit you a couple times. I think it's the shops down at Mandalay Bay. You're down there. You sign autographs and talk. Give our listeners an idea of your schedule when they can drop by and say hello.
Well, I work at the Art of Music store, and there's one at Mandalay and there's one at MGM, and we go back and forth based on the conventions that are in town. And I'm usually there 20 days a month, 12 to 4:30 every day. And Brent, to me, it's first of all, Vegas is the only city where this gig works because every 3 days more people come in, more people leave. Last year, 42 million people visit Las Vegas. And I get to sit for 4.5 hours a day and talk baseball with people. And so I play in a doubleheader, Brent, and I'll never make an out.
I love it, my man. Pete, thanks so much. We'll check in time to time. I'll drop down and see you. You know, you're my Hall of Famer, my friend.
Hey, Brent, if you're at South Point, you doing your show from South Point?
Yes. Yep.
They got the best restaurant in town there. It's called Michael's.
Oh, yeah.
It's the best restaurant in Las Vegas. The best Dover sole in the world at South Point's Michael's.
It absolutely is the best, and named for the owner of South Point, Michael Gahn. Legendary figure here in Las Vegas. Pete, thank you so much for being with us, my friend.
It's always a pleasure, Brent. You're the best, buddy.
So are you. Hey, thanks, Peter. I really appreciate it.
All right, man. Anytime, man. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, thanks.
You're listening to Brent Musburger and My Guys in the Desert, only on Sirius Channel 215, XM Channel 204.